We're going to call the meeting to order. The second item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 is adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion? Moved by Duje, supported by Kleinfeld. Any discussion on the agenda? Please vote on your iPad. Unanimous? The agenda is unanimously adopted. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes for the August 9th, 2018 meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Romano, support by Kraft. Any discussion? Please vote on your iPad. The item passes 13-0. Item number 5 is public participation. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the Justice and Public Safety Committee? Seeing none, we'll close public participation and move to item number 6A, the budget reviews for the court. We have Chief Judge James Burnett.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, the Board of Commissioners.
Judge, could you hit your microphone?
Oh, everyone hear me?
There's a
Press that little button, Chris.
All right. I'm here today for, I see on the agenda, for the Circuit Court Annual Report and our budgets. I would like to introduce the staff for the Circuit Courts. If my Court Administrator, Julie Bovashan, John Neisel is my deputy. Lisa Ellis is Court Services Director. Susan Shabo is the Court Finance Director. And between them, there's 70, they oversee, well, the Court Administrator oversees all the court employees, but all those departments are approximately 77 employees. Thomas Bloom is here from the front of the court. Tom oversees 107 employees. Nicole Folds, our Juvenile Administrator, with Dave Joseph, the Program Director. They oversee 78 employees. We have John Brennan here from the Probate Court Administrator, approximately 29 employees. Where's John? There he is. I need bifocals. I don't know why I didn't get by. I don't know what I'm. There's Sandy Kegler's here from District Court in Romeo, approximately 15 employees, and Marlisa Bosheman from the New Baltimore. What do you have? I think 17 employees, 16.6 employees, 18 employees. Okay. All right, and everybody received. We sent out our annual report. If everyone's saw it, it goes through what we've done over the year, our accomplishments. We have approximately, our new filings are slightly increased. We have, last year was 19,149, and this year is 19,237. And I hope everyone, Commissioner Drolet, I'm sure you read the full report. It's very interesting. With respect to our budget, my staff is here for any questions you have with respect to the budget. Overall, we're asking for 3.5 new positions, one of them being a circuit court judge. It's kind of convoluted, but at the end of the day, the circuit court judge is 100% funded by the state, their salary. The secretary for the circuit court judge, and then a probation officer for juvenile, and which is 50% funded, state reimbursed, and a change from a part-time counselor to a full-time counselor, that's 50% funded by the state also. And then we are saving the county a reduction in institutional care costs for outplacement of juveniles. That's a savings to the general fund of $150,000. And any other questions you have, my staff's here for any questions.
I think we had some speakers. Is there anybody from finance? Steve, is Steve here? Do you have any comments, Steve?
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioners. In terms of the general fund budget for the courts in general, in terms of all divisions, if you went through the individual pages, you're gonna see a lot of moving parts. Things look up and down and kind of all over the place. At the end of the day, in the general fund, they're adding 2 positions, 1 judge and a judicial secretary with the new judgeship. You'll see that there were 9 positions transferred from the circuit court to the juvenile court. That's the reimbursement division. The court can address the details of that if you so wish. The district court probation department was basically eliminated. There were 5 positions in that department. 3 were transferred to, I'm gonna say Romeo, and then 2 to New Baltimore. So at the end of the day, 2 positions, overall increase. The other thing you got going on, if I can back up for a minute, is this whole creation of the MIDC fund. So you have $3.7 million of attorney fees being transferred out of the general fund to the MIDC fund. You've got about $1.1 million in reimbursement revenue for attorney fee reimbursements also being transferred out, and a new transfer out from the general fund to the MIDC fund in the amount of $2.8 million. That was all a cost-neutral move there. If you were to add back the $3.7 million of attorney fees and expert witness fees, there's about $100,000 of expert witness fees in there. Overall expenses for the courts, in all of them combined, are going up about 3%. So really not much going on overall, just a lot of individual moving pieces. So, and if we want to talk, we'll talk about the child care fund, because there's a court portion of that as well as front of the court when we get outside of the general fund. So that completes my comments of the general fund.
Okay, we have several speakers. Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Steve, for the explanation, because it is a little bit complicated trying to look at all the pieces that are moving around, and thank you, Your Honor, for the explanation. Just out of curiosity, you cited the caseload had gone up a little bit. I don't know what the percentage was, but it was relatively steady, went up a little bit. So in light of that, what is the need then to add the additional positions? I know that one of them is being paid for by the state for the judgeship, but is there an argument to be made that we're adding new judges and new positions despite the fact that the caseload really hasn't gone up that much?
Well, over the last, the scale report, the scale recommendation, and correct me if Ms. Wolfson, when was the recommendation for the extra judgeships? Like 5 years? It went through the state legislature about 4 years.
Judge, will you use the microphone so that our recording equipment can pick it up?
sorry.
Thank you.
So, the new judgeship in 19 that's going on right now, there's a race right now that person will take office in 19, and that's the new judgeship. And there was one in 16, and those were approved by the state legislature and the governor and eventually the Board of Commissioners a number of years ago. And the recommendation from Scale had been an ongoing recommendation, I think, over the last 10 years, that we were underjudged by actually more. We got 2 new judges, but they were saying we needed 4 new judges to equalize among other courts throughout the state. So in other words, technically speaking, and I'm not saying we're doing this, technically speaking, under the Supreme Court Administrator's recommendation, we could ask the state legislature for another judgeship.
So you're saying the caseload hasn't increased dramatically, but you were underjudged last year and the previous years
In the
as well.
previous years, and so they've recommended consistently that we were underjudged by 4 judgeships, or maybe even more. It fluctuated, but it was always, most courts are overjudged, most circuit courts throughout the state of Michigan, for example, like Wayne County. But Oakland and us, there was a understanding that looking at our dockets and the number of judges we had, we were underjudged. And so they recommended 4 judgeships. At the end of the day, we went through the State House, State Senate, the governor's office, then we came here for 1 judgeship in 16 and 1 judgeship in 18. It's kind of confusing, but we lost a judgeship back in 2010, and they added that back in 2016. That was just getting us back to where we were in 2010. So when we got back to the 2016, they added the extra one in 16 and extra one in 18. That's 2 extra judgeships, when in reality, Scale was saying we should have 4 extra judgeships. But I wasn't going to ask you guys for an extra 2
Is the
judgeships.
judge being requested now the one that was approved in 18?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Your Honor. A couple quick questions, just so I have an understanding. The new position of that judge is, we're getting paid back for from the state for that position, correct?
Yes.
And then, is it my understanding that 50% of the salary for the secretary will be paid back?
No, 50% of the probation officer in juvenile court will be paid back. The secretary's position is a county position paid for by the county.
All right, so the secretary is a new position that we'll
Yes.
be adding on. What if, there was another position you said that was 50%?
There's a probation officer, if you could,
And that's in the child care fund, so that's not in the general fund, so that, Steve, I don't think has spoke about that yet, but in the child care fund, we're asking for, 1 new juvenile probation officer and a part-time counselor to be made a full-time counselor. Those are both reimbursed 50% from the state.
So the counselor and the probation officer, 50%, is that wages and fringes, 50% of everything?
Right.
Okay, thank you. The next part of that question is, when you say probation officer, is that the deputy who's in the courtroom?
no,
So
no,
this-
that would be in,
so we
that
have
would
a-
be in
Juvenile probation
juvenile court, a probation officer who oversees the juvenile.
Like a caseload of juvenile
ca-
kids who are on probation.
Completely understand. So but we will be adding a secretary to the new judgeship. We'll
Yes.
be adding a court deputy or.
In the sheriff's department, yes.
The sheriff's
but
department.
They'll be
yeah.
adding.
I don't know if the, I would have, if the sheriff, has the
Yes,
sheriff
they've
asked?
asked, yes.
So
And
a
then-
secretary, a deputy, what about,
A court clerk, not a reporter, a clerk.
It will be video, so there will be no,
so it's a clerk and a secretary too, so it'll be
The
3.
clerk comes from the county clerk's office.
Right, I'm just saying, we have to supply that to the court though.
Yes.
This is above and beyond what we're doing now, or is this a .5 type of a person?
I mean, I don't know if, are they asking, oh, go ahead.
So when we had a new judge, we had 5 positions. So we have a judge, a judicial secretary, a judicial court clerk, an assistant prosecuting attorney, and a deputy.
And the probation?
No, probation
in
is
the-
in juvenile, that's a separate.
So probation's in juvenile, which is a county employee, but the probation, it's confusing, but the probation officers for circuit court are state employees. They are not even county employees.
Okay.
It's not- The probation officer is not related to the new judgeship.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
caseload.
Yeah,
I'm
issue.
sorry,
yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm sorry, you said a deputy, right?
You got a deputy for the courtroom. a
Prosecuting
prosecutor for the
attorney's
courtroom,
office.
A judicial court clerk, a judicial secretary, and a judge.
So 5 positions.
5
And
positions.
one of them is 100% refunded and 2 of them are 50% funded?
No, all the 4 are all general fund.
Okay, so those other 2 are 50% that's not directly
Correct.
involved with that?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you on that portion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. Thank you, Judge, for bringing your whole team in. You know, it was the first time I think I've heard the chief judge, and maybe you've done it before, and maybe I've forgotten, but to describe all of the department heads under your jurisdiction and the amount of employees they supervise. You've got a really impressive group there. I mean, there's a lot going on there. I think that's, at least did well for me to just remind me how much activity there is over there and how many people and moving parts there are over there and how many good staff you have over there run things so smoothly. This has been a very rough year and a half for all of you, believe me. We all know that. But just while they're all here, thank you for enduring and making it good, because it could have been a lot worse without having quality management under us. And there's a credit to all of the team that you have there. And I really want to say thank you for all of you for doing an outstanding job, because
They do excellent.
you really didn't
excellent
miss a
job.
beat despite some of the missing parts that were in the operation. Having said that, now that there were some management positions, there were some management changes in reporting that were inputted when the clerk was in there, the old former clerk was in there. Have they went back to the old ways of doing things? Are the reporting procedures still the same as they were when we were trying to operate around a broken part?
It's gone back to, everything goes through the county clerk now. So we're not, before we were stepping in and helping with filling positions and directing staff, and we do not do that anymore since.
Yeah, Judge Kelly had given us the court, basically. We were running the clerk's office for a while, but that's
Yes.
not the case anymore.
Okay, is there,
The clerk does it.
all right, is the case, is everything back to normal levels, or is there any?
We've
Since you're
got-
here, I have to ask you.
No, we've gotten the e-filing, and the lien. In fact, where is he?
Yeah, we're at 125 e-filings dating back to September 7th, 112 liens dating back to August 29th. Our abstracts are at 0, so we're basically up to date at this point.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And our county clerk is here, Kathy Smith. Just want to recognize that she's back
Oh,
there.
I can't introduce everybody.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Steady
Thank
hand
you,
at the
Madam Chair.
wheel.
I got a question. I guess, Steve, this one's going to be for you. Why is the probation officer for the juvenile division coming out of the child care fund? What is, and I guess maybe you might answer this one too, Judge. Is the new judge going to be a family law judge, or is the new judge going to be civil criminal?
That's a good question.
Okay, all right.
It's almost, I don't want to say 100%, but it's mostly, and there's some judges who wish that the person would be in family court, but that's probably not going to happen.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain that it's going to be civil criminal.
Okay.
So-
And then I guess if it's civil criminal, then I guess, Steve, why would a juvenile probation officer be needed for a civil criminal judge? And
No, because
It's unrelated?
It's unrelated.
Okay,
It's
it's
an-
completely unrelated, okay. I guess that was my question there. And the other thing, I want to echo what Commissioner Brown did. I think this is the first time you've really been in front of us since all the troubles from last year. And I want to thank you. I know you and I talked quite a bit at different times, and I want to thank you for keeping, the ship afloat, and not having us sink during all that time. And I'm very grateful that you, along with the other judges, chose our current clerk, Kathy Smith, who
Yep.
came in with all her experience and got us on track. So
Done an
thanks again.
excellent job.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dujay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Judge. Heck of a team. You put together a great team. I couldn't be happier to hear about the lien system and everything that was backlogged for 6 months, if not more. Kathy's done a superb job. You should be commended for the job you've done in the last year and a half, and going further back than that. Question. Out of the 5 positions that are coming in with the new judge, the assistant prosecutor is also covered by the state to a certain extent, 50% or something. Is that correct or incorrect? Can somebody tell me that?
No, I'm pretty sure, I mean, unless it's, there's certain positions that are covered in the
Not to my
prosecutor's office, but
knowledge,
not that general.
Okay, so out of the 5 positions, how much are we paying for and how much is the state paying for?
Well, the salary of a judge that the county pays to a judge is $45,724.
Okay,
So we pay that. Now, there is a formula, I'm not exactly sure of the intricacies of the formula where the court will reimburse us part of the cost of the court.
Right.
They call it court, we get about $3.7 million. So I would assume that the total salary and benefit package or cost of the judicial secretary will also go in to that formula. But I don't know how.
so everything's gonna get rolled in?
But I don't know how it's gonna shake out in terms of additional court financing.
Okay.
Other than the state does specifically reimburse the $45,000.
Does that kind of fluctuate every now and then?
The 45,724, no.
That
It's been
stays?
that way for
All right.
many years, I'll say.
If you can come up with the formula and let me know after, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers on the list, but on the agenda, under 6A, there were several subcategories: circuit court, family counseling, juvenile court, probate, friend of the court, law library, and district court probation. Are there any questions regarding any of those subcategories that the commissioners wanted to go over? Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the district court, I mean, is that, we're gonna talk about that now?
Any questions?
Okay. I know the county has been subsidizing 2 of the district courts. Where do we stand? I know it was going in the right direction from where it was. There was an additional half judge or a full-time judge, I believe, last year that was added out in Romeo, or
Magistrate.
magistrate, an additional one, correct? So they have two magistrates?
They have the same hours.
There's
Or-
two magistrates, but the same hours are still there.
Same
Between the
hours.
two,
Yeah,
okay.
they split the.
When I go to overall look at this, I go into the capital program. Both of those facilities are requiring Romeo is $300,000 for in 2020, between 19 and 20 for a new rooftop unit. New Baltimore is $100,000 probably in 20 to 23. Added costs to the general fund that are coming out to subsidize these courts, not only for the actual operations, but the actual structures as well. And I guess, where are we at with that? Is this still, are we required? Do we need to have both of these? Can we have one and consolidate them to one building? Where are we at with this?
Well, they're,
At the SCAO, the State Court Administrator's Office came in and analyzed that about 2 years ago and advised us not to combine them just yet. There were a lot of, the two judges have different philosophies, they process things differently, they manage things differently, and they wanted us to see if we could get them, the whole teams closer together before we thought about even merging those two different places. Also,
there was
both
dis- there was-
locations,
yeah, there was discussion of a single location,
but
but,
the parking at New Baltimore, the SCAO considered inadequate to have two full-time judges there. Romeo is not in a convenient location, so it would be looking at a whole new location for a combined court. So it was never taken any further at that point.
Okay.
the New Baltimore court is relatively new, and, of course, the people then who have business in court from Romeo would have to come to New Baltimore and vice versa. And we're attempting to look for some kind of middle area, ground, but
Okay, on that note, I just know firsthand from the municipality that I live in, that they're building a court, and the participants of those communities that court represents, they're raising funds. I believe it's a building fund. They added $5 a ticket. I believe that there's several things that are involved with that. And the ownership of that court, is there a particular reason why, is there something we can do to force those communities to take that court? Those communities that it's representing, to take ownership of them, like all the other cities and municipalities in the county?
It's by statute that the county has those two courts. It's a statute that requires that, so we'd have to have a statutory change.
Okay, and thank you. When you get the opportunity, please, if you could forward on to Crystal or to someone at the office here, that statute, because I don't believe I've read that in a long time, or if I have even read it. And that'll probably answer more of my questions.
and
on
I
the-
suspect that, not to be too, I'm assuming that there'll be a Senator Pete Lucido coming in January 19th, in 19, and he would be probably the main guy, since his district actually covers both of them.
Right. No, I just don't think it's fair to the other municipalities, so thank you. One more thing, and if this, to go to their building, is you guys have some new IT stuff coming up, and I didn't know if we were gonna talk about that now, or we were gonna wait for Jaco and have them come back to explain what they have going on?
Probably the latter.
The latter, okay,
Still
thank
working
you,
it out
Madam
with
Chair.
the exec's office.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lucido? Commissioner Brown?
Thank you, Commissioner. I share Commissioner Cavelli's concerns about the fact that we need more funding to cover those district courts. And the fact the state of Michigan's got a process where they take the tickets, the money that's revenue that's written by the local community and send it to the state. And then they launder it, and we get back a pennies on what the tickets are written on. We tried to make it a change about 10 years ago when Senator Sanborn was in office. Didn't go very far. Senator, we're gonna take a new run at it with the new incoming Senator Lucido and the rest of the delegation to see if we can't redirect those monies back there to help cover those $300,000 in costs, at least for the Romeo area, and probably similar things for the New Baltimore court as well. So That is the tack we need to take. I think that's probably the best, most direct way to get relief in the short term. And long term, well, when the community gets, a little bit more developed out there, they might be able to support a court on their own. But right now, I think this is the best way to go, is to proceed the state with those, changing those statutes to get more revenue directed back to the district court where it belongs. They have it's just a pure profit raid on the part of the state, taking money out of the local community. And there's no need for it. Thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. I actually see a difference between the two courts because Romeo has to cover a large rural area. New Baltimore is built up similar to a city. And I think the reason it was originally set up that way is the district courts that were under the county were handling rural areas, but those areas aren't rural anymore on the east side. I do think there's a difference between the two. I think that community probably could afford the cost, and those of us that have communities that are paying the cost, I don't know that it's necessarily Senator Lucido we would talk to. He might be the one that doesn't want us to do it. We might talk to somebody else. Thank you.
He's very open-minded. He looks at all options at the table, decide what's best for the taxpayers of his district.
Commissioner Dujay.
Thanks. Just the last question. The law library. In the days of Google and so on and so forth, do we still need a law library?
The funds come from,
And I see that it's fines and forfeitures and so on and so forth.
so I don't think we spend over the funds that are allotted in there. It's a small law library. It's on the 13th floor of the old county building. It's a place for attorneys to go and still have access to those books. Impropers are common up there, so we have maintained it for those reasons. Not everybody has access to Westlaw and those expensive.
Fair enough, but the law library has been a pain in a thorn in my side, let's put it that way, because I just don't understand it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers on the list. Are there any other speakers? Okay. Are there any other questions regarding any of the other divisions of the court or any of the other programming? Commissioner Sauger?
I just got one, nothing to do with the budget and personnel. I'm curious, how is Judge Leduc doing?
He's,
I know he's had a long struggle.
I had lunch with him a couple weeks ago. He's back to normal. So he's good.
And Judge, you mentioned you need cataracts or something. You had him when you were on the Board of Commissioners.
No, I need nothing. No bifocals. I just gotta do.
Commissioner Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at juvenile court. I have a question about the staff, because this one looks like it jumps from 46 to 55.
We moved the reimbursement division into juvenile court. It was previously in the circuit court. The reimbursement division collects money for the juvenile court, so it made sense to have them supervised and the money reflected in the juvenile court.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
that's why the increase.
Again, trying to figure out all these
Yeah,
moving
I'm-
parts and everything, and that's the largest
It's-
jump,
yeah.
and I go, holy smokes, that's big. So, okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair Smith?
Thanks. We're talking about district court probation. It says eliminated, absorbed into district court budgets. Can you explain like what's going on with the probation and why it's moving and where the,
So it was one probation department for Romeo and New Baltimore,
Okay.
and the probation officers would rotate between the two locations, and sometimes they would all be at Romeo and nobody would be at New Baltimore, and the judges have different probation styles in addition to that, so it was best to move them just under those administrators at Romeo and New Baltimore and have them report directly to the administrators and no longer be a unit anymore and split that. For supervisory purposes and so that there was always coverage at every location, we just eliminated the department, moved the positions into the respective Romeo and New Baltimore, and they
With-
will report directly up to their
with the same number of people, we just kind of
Yes.
divided them up to
Yep.
work?
There's no director of
There's no-
probation.
right.
The probation officers now, at the chain of command, they go directly to.
Their administrators.
Their administrators. who are-
And that was split evenly before from their budgets?
Before they were kind of.
They were in one unit with one budget, and we divided the money out, like, the revenue between who collected for which location. Now it's gonna be in those specific courts.
Right.
And so New Baltimore and Romeo will always be covered. We won't have to send someone from Romeo over to New Baltimore, or vice versa.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Steve, I flew through and didn't ask you to comment on each of the different departments. Is there anything that you wanted to highlight or anything that we should pay special attention to?
No, I mean, we're basically adding, we're adding 2 positions in the general fund. Yeah, overall expenses are, they're going up 3%. There's not really much going on there other than realigning the divisions and realigning staff among the divisions, so.
Chair Smith, go ahead.
Thanks.
Thank you,
So,
Steve.
on a final note with the district court things, just, I understand that, combine, having everybody go to New Baltimore, having everybody go to Romeo is, I mean, almost undoable, right? I mean, those are miles apart, like almost countries apart.
Yeah. So the scale recommendation,
They were looking at a middle ground type
Is
thing.
there some kind of middle ground? But-
So my question is this, though, and this is, I don't know if you guys look at this, I'm sure you do, you have finance people, but, so compared to other district courts, I mean, and I don't need the answer right now, but I'd like to know how they run comparatively speaking. And I'm sure New Baltimore probably doesn't have as many cases as, obviously, as Warren, or as, Clinton has Mount Clemens, and Harrison, so they have more people to, I guess, fund, but my question, I guess, is if you guys have looked at the numbers that they're bringing in and compared them to other district courts to make sure that, that they're funded similarly, right? Because I know Clinton Township gives money, or 41B gives money back to Clinton Township at the end of the year, so they're self-funding. And I want to know if it's because they just have that many more cases, which makes sense, or if they have higher fees and fines and they've made it work, or they have less people to do the same job, but but they're going crazy. I don't know, but I mean, that's the only question I really have is, I know we have to have those. It does seem almost impossible to combine them, especially being that the new building's there, and what are we gonna do with that new building? But on the other side, just like as the financial people, the budget people, to make sure that at least comparatively speaking, number-wise, they equate operationally to other district courts.
Yeah, and Julie, we have looked, have we?
We've started to look at that. We haven't finalized numbers. Part of our district court probation split was to get better numbers. Most district courts have their probation departments rolled right into all of those numbers, and you could see the revenue and.
Because probation makes money, right? I mean, at the end of the day, right?
So it was harder for us to see that, so I'm hoping next year, 2019, we're gonna get better numbers that will reflect what each group is doing, that we can compare to the other
Okay.
district courts. So that's our goal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. More so for Steve. How did you quantify the dollars that will not be coming into the circuit court from probation and then divvying it up into the district court for those 2 courts?
It's district court probation. It never came to the circuit court.
So their probate, so Shelby Township, 41A has their own?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
they have their own probation.
Correct. That district court probation department was solely for Romeo and New Baltimore.
But they operate as one unit for both.
Years ago, it was a very large department that worked for various district courts.
Right.
It slowly dwindled. District courts started to operate their own probation departments. It ended up being just Romeo and New Baltimore. And now we've split it, so each Romeo and New Baltimore have their own
And we have
probation department. 5 positions, 4 officers, and 1 secretary.
Okay.
So 4 probation officers, 1 secretary?
Correct.
And that's between the 2 courts, so I guess each court gets 2.
New Baltimore has 1 probation officer and the administrative assistant, and then, or.
Romeo has
secretary
more.
Has 3 probation officers.
Romeo has a higher
Probation
probation caseload under Judge Ledoux.
Thank you. Last call for speakers. Okay, thank you, Judge, thank you, team. Supported? Support by Carabelli. All those in favor, please vote on your iPads. Just A, yes. Thank you, Judge and team.
Oh, thank you.
Item 6B is the Michigan Indigent Defense Fund. Steve?
Well, the MIDC fund, I don't know which page on your agenda. It's on D36 of the budget, and again, what's happening here is the new delivery of indigent defense services. We've talked about this in the past. We came to you earlier this year with a budget amendment to transfer money out of the general fund and create this new fund. There are 4.5 new positions that go along with this. There were 2 deputies, 2 corrections deputies, and a part-time pretrial specialist or pretrial managers. I believe it was a pretrial specialist. We came to you with that budget amendment after this book was put together, or right around that time. So when we publish the final, we'll have a 2000 amended column. It'll have numbers in it. But again, essentially cost neutral to the general fund because we moved defense attorney fees out, we moved revenue out, and we moved accordingly an equal amount of revenue. There will be additional costs as a result of the legislation with the new positions and so on and so forth, training and capital outlay and things of that nature. And you'll see that the state is providing almost $2.6 million as of now for the delivery of those additional services. So hopefully some of the folks from the court, if you have any more questions on the operations of that or the nature of the legislation.
Steve, we just talked about with the new judge, we're adding a new prosecutor. Are we increasing any amount to the indigent defense fund as a result of the new judge corresponding to the adding of the new prosecutor?
We're adding costs for the attorney at first appearance, and I think Mr. Neisel can speak more in detail about that. So it's for like sort of on-call pay for the defense attorneys, as I understand, and maybe oversimplifying it, but.
I believe that's correct, Commissioner. The counsel at first appearance is about, I think it's about a 10% increase. Correct me if I'm wrong, Susan. And then overall, because the actual caseload that's requiring indigent defense isn't changing, there shouldn't need to be an additional amount budgeted. It's just these specific items that are covered by the MIDC standards that are increasing.
I guess then that's my question though, then why do we need to add a prosecutor if we don't need to add corresponding? Is it presumed that people will retain their own attorneys, or what's the rationale for that?
In terms of adding a prosecutor?
Right, if we're adding a prosecutor because we're adding a new judge, but we're not adding any new indigent defense.
Oh, I couldn't really speak to the adding a new prosecutor aspect of it myself.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good to see you, John. Looking at this, like, there's capital outlay. Like, what are the anticipated costs for capital outlay, if you know?
Sorry, I have it in here. I'd rather not speculate since I can give you the amount. So they need to do a build-out at the district courts so that they have private areas for attorneys to meet with their clients.
Okay.
And then
When you say the
additionally-
district courts, you're talking about Romeo and
Romeo and New Baltimore.
Okay, fair enough.
And then
Okay.
there's also some build-out at the jail that will be going on as part of this in order to soundproof rooms so that attorneys can meet with their clients there. And I believe the total... Would that be this? 84,000, Steve says.
Okay. Let me see if there's anything else that I want to look at. I think that's all the questions I have for now, John. I know you got a big task ahead of you, so with this new thing, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, this funding is coming from the state for 2019. Do we know how far along we're gonna, is this, for 1 year, is it for 5 years, foreseeable future? What's?
So the grant, this would be the first year, because next year there are additional standards which go into play. They have 4 more standards, which they've just submitted to licensing and regulatory affairs. those are going to require compliance. Those will require us to ask for additional grant money from the state to fund that. So it should be increasing every year, what we're asking from the state.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you, Madam
welcome.
Chair.
Chair Smith?
Thank you. Hi, John, how are you?
Hey, I'm well. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Leonetti's question about the capital outlay. Did you mention build-outs at both courts? I haven't been to Romeo Court, but I've been to New Baltimore, and it seems like there's plenty of empty rooms there. I didn't know what the build, and you mentioned some about soundproof rooms. Is that for both courts, did you say also? Or is
You
that
know,
part of the build-out?
I apologize. I misspoke with Romeo. They had existing room there, I believe. It is, or I'm sorry, New Baltimore had existing room there. It is Romeo that they have that lockup in the back, and they had it separated, so they're building a window there and an area that the attorney can go back there.
That makes more sense. And what did you say about soundproof rooms? It just caught me.
In the jail, in the county jail, they'd
Okay.
be soundproofing some rooms so that attorneys can meet there or do polycoms with the court there.
Okay,
And it can't be heard by the other prisoners, so
Alright.
that they can have the confidential communication.
great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Just with respect to Commissioner Kraft's question, we would expect them to fund any more mandates because of the Headley expectation. There would be a huge battle if they made the mandate and then failed to fund it. I think it would end up in court. So everybody's watching that, and we'll be watching it for the years to come. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is more for Steve on page D21 of the budget.
Which one is that, Commissioner?
D21. Is this where you, the revenue, total revenues, the increase? You went from 189 in 17 up to 230 in 2018, adopted up to 316. Is that the what are those, what's that increase right there in the revenues on D-21?
These are circuit court grants, either in the adult drug court or the mental health court. I know Julie or Susan can help me out here in terms of increases in grant funds that the court receives. I can follow back up with you.
If you can follow back up,
Yeah.
If they don't know it off the top of their head, because either way, those grants would come in front of the board, right? To make an, is this already when this says adopted 2018, and I asked you the other day, amended, has this already been amended, or is this something we have to amend?
No, if it's amended, it's been amended.
Okay, I don't recall. I don't recall that. If you can
Well, we didn't,
double check your numbers.
We received extra money for,
Yeah.
three of our grants, I believe. So we came back, Lisa Ellis came back and presented,
Swift and Sure Sanctions was amended for 70,000. I don't remember that amendment coming here specifically, but I'm confident that it did. I mean, we can circle back.
No, Crystal, excuse me, Madam Chair, if you can just double check to see if they did come up to us, because I see that spike and I didn't understand what it was from. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other speakers on the list? Seeing none, is there a motion to receive and file? Moved by Drollet, supported by Sauger. Please vote on your iPad. Unanimously passed. Item 6C, the JJC, Rhonda Westfall and Steve.
So again, as I've mentioned in prior years, there are really three pieces to the child care fund. There's the actual detention facility itself, which is under the supervision of Ms. Westfall. There are juvenile court programs, which are under the supervision of the court, and more specifically Nicole Falls. And then there is a DHS, or the State Department of Health and Human Services portion for neglect and abuse, foster care related expenses. So you'll see on page D24 of the budget, again, I'm not sure where that is in terms of page numbering on your agenda. We break those out into those various categories. What you'll notice on page D23 in particular is if you go down about 3/4 of the way or 80% of the way down the page, you'll see that the general fund contribution is going down about $900,000 for 2019. And again, there's a few things going on there that are driving that. One of those is in the area of salaries and wages. And I think I mentioned this during my overall budget presentation a week or two ago. We have historically staffed or budgeted staffing at the detention facility for a population of somewhere around 100 kids. As we know, we've been, having a population of 40 or 50, maybe 60 at times. So what we've done in terms of payroll for the JJC is we've put in a 20% turnover factor. We've talked about the turnover factor in the general fund before. Over the last few years, they've been running somewhere between 70 and 75% of budget by the end of the year because, again, we budget for staffing at a higher level or have had in the past. So we're trying to right-size that. I'll continue to use that term. So we've put in a 20% turnover factor for the JJC. If the population were to increase for some reason to 60 or 70 or 80, we would probably end up coming back to you and asking for a budget amendment. But at this point in time, we have reduced the salaries there. In the detention facility, as the judge indicated earlier, we've added a position and a half in the juvenile court program area. Those costs are 50% funded by the state of Michigan. However, I believe the cost of those were around $140,000. We reduced placement costs in outside facilities by $150,000 to pay for that. Generally speaking, as I understand, we add more people or bring more kids into our own programs, then we have less need for them to be in outside facilities, sort of thing. And then we also were looking back at historical spending levels for state ward chargebacks, and we reduced that budget by about $450,000 for the year, because we've been a little bit heavy on the budget there for a few years. So when you kind of mesh that all together, at the end of the day, the child care fund is going to require about $900,000 less from the general fund than it has in prior years. I also have Kim Borgia from the state of Michigan. She's the new director of the County Department of Human Services office. If you have any questions about the foster care side of things, the neglect and abuse.
Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Spiegel, under your revenue, you went, other revenue, it went from 108 in 2016 to 296 in 2017, and then totally eliminated from 18. What was the other revenue that we no longer get?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to circle back on that with you, Commissioner. It was probably a one-time thing. Dave, do you know off the top of your head? We can get back with you on that, Commissioner.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Caravelli?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve, where would the St. Clair juveniles fall in the budget here? Would that be the other
reimbursements, I believe.
Reimbursements? And what portion of that reimbursements? Do you know?
I'm gonna say 400,000? Yeah, a little less than 400.
Okay, if you get an opportunity,
The other portion would be attorney fee reimbursements from the parents.
okay, when you get an opportunity, if you guys could prepare that and let us know what what you're anticipating.
Certainly can do that.
And with that said, what's the number of heads on an average that you're using for St. Clair County for the facility?
I'm sorry, the question again.
Average St. Clair population.
The average population is about 7 kids.
7?
Yes.
And then the average of Macomb County youth that's in there?
Average is about 30.
Madam, if you can come up to the mic, please.
I hate to misquote, I'd be guessing.
And I'm not gonna,
Yeah, I don't want to guess. I can get you this, the accurate numbers.
And if you could, Chris, if we can get the accurate numbers from the division of both. My question for you, do you know off the top of your head of how many the facility can house total?
Well, we have a total building capacity of 140 kids.
140?
140. So we are staffed right now for 7 units. We are staffed for 70 kids.
Okay, so you're staffed for 50% of what the occupancy could be.
Correct.
Your average is somewhere in the 30, and I won't hold it to you until we get the real numbers, and roughly 7 from the other, so an average of 40. I'll just round up to say 40. So we're almost staffed double of what we actually have, roughly.
Right,
And
roughly.
Until we get the exact figures. I'm
Correct.
just taking a look at this. And I know we have a nice facility over there. Have we looked with what we actually have of us working together with other counties to say, with their facilities, where they're staffing, where's the trend, where are we going? Is this a facility that we need to take a look at, being that we're only using a third of it? That we may want to, from 20,000 feet, look at the long term of what direction this is going in?
Well, we did reach out to St. Clair County in 2012 and 13, and they ended up actually closing their facility. They had built a new one, and the population was significantly low, so they ended up closing it down, and we picked up that contract with them. We do occasionally house a child from Sanilac. We do not have a formal contract with them. Occasionally, we'll have a Sanilac County youth. Our other surrounding counties are Oakland, that has their own facility. Wayne County has their own facility. We have not engaged in conversations with Wayne and/or Oakland County. That might be just a little bit above my pay grade.
And
To use an expression,
I
yeah.
appreciate that, but I'm
Yeah.
also looking, okay, well, we got Lapeer. I mean, there's just a lot of counties around us. We're at a third of our capacity. Does it make sense? And if the long-term trend, which I don't know, it's been trending downward.
Yes.
So being that it's trending downward, is that because of the courts and the programs that they're putting in? And that's great, but is this something, do we need this facility? And if so, is it this size facility? And economically, to heat and cool and maintain a facility that you're using a third of? Long-term, I'd like to see finance crunch the numbers and tell us, what does this really look at? Because if I'm using a third and over a period of time, it may, at 20,000 feet, we may want to take a look at what the future holds.
I do know that there are counties throughout Michigan that obviously are relying on other facilities. Macomb has had their own local facility, I believe, since the 1960s. That would, in the event we looked at, a closure of this facility, that would necessitate our court looking to other communities and relying on them for bed space.
Yeah, and make it clear, I'm not advocating closing, I'm not advocating doing anything, I'm advocating taking a look at the possibilities of bringing in more to use the facility.
Sure.
Or and go somewhere else, or maybe a smaller facility, and this facility can be used. There's a lot of different options here, and I don't know what they all are, but it begs the question, we've been using a third and the trend's going down, that we may want to look at the bigger picture and say, in 10 years, what are we going to have here?
Yeah, I think those are excellent observations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
you're
you, Madam Chair.
welcome.
Commissioner Dujay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I think JJC does a heck of a job one way or another. I don't envy you your position. But that being said, I'm actually shocked at the number of 37 to 40. And that's got to fluctuate with time per month, per season, and so on and so forth. You said we reached out to St. Clair County. Somehow Sanilac sent us whatever. Is it possible to go to, let's say, like Commissioner Carabelli was saying, to Sanilac, Livingston, Lapeer County, or wherever else, and see if we can get more people into our facility? My gut tells me that this is a good thing that we have here in Macomb County, that we should keep it in Macomb County, but I have this really sick sensation that we're having less and less people there because Dr. Spitz is seeing more and more of them. And that being said, I just assume have you see them than have Dr. Spitz see them. Let's see what we can do to see if we can fill up the beds a little more than we have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you. I know that we go into this discussion every year, have for the last several years, because it is starting to look like it's going to be a permanent downward trend. We know that Oakland and Wayne have their own facilities, but do we have any idea whether or not their facilities are underfilled or overfilled, or anything about how they're doing with their facilities?
If I had to guess, I would say that they're underfilled, but I can give some more specific numbers.
Okay, I mean, I don't think we could deal with that necessarily this year, but I think that should be a discussion that's on the table, at least between those three counties. I'm not sure about the logistics for counties that are much further away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions. The first one pertains to juvenile court programs. I'm looking at the budget numbers here, and I'm really just curious what detention diversion is, because that seems to take a good chunk of the budget. I just am curious.
Detention diversion, it's staffed. There are 10 caseworkers and a supervisor. So when petitions get filed with the court, we take a look at those petitions, and anything that falls within the Juvenile Diversion Act, we set for a preliminary inquiry where we take a look at it and see if we can divert these kids from formal court processing. So because it's in the child care fund, the in-home care portion mandates that we can have no more than 20 kids on a caseload. So it's an intensive caseload. They have 20 kids, and the goal is to intervene with the kid and the family early and keep them from formal court processing and not having a formal record. So most of the costs are in staff. But yeah, there are 10 caseworkers and a supervisor.
Okay, so I look at this as money well spent, because then we're not housing them, paying for them. This is
correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My other question, I believe, is for Steve. With positions, how many of these are grant funded? Do you know that off the top of your head?
All of the state reimburses 50% of all.
For
of
all of them? Okay, thank you, Steve.
Back to, I'm not sure if it was Commissioner Carabelli, somebody asked about why we have probation officers in this fund versus the general fund. So any position in this fund is reimbursed 50% by the state of Michigan.
Okay.
Based on the nature of their work.
Gotcha. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Lucido?
I'm just curious, as far as the facility and how it's set up, are most of the rooms with beds? So are there any empty rooms where it could be used, if we're not filling up the building, it could be used for something different? Not taking away what you're doing,
Right.
but just using space for something else.
Okay. All of the rooms, sleeping rooms in the facility have beds in them. So there are 140 sleeping beds in the facility.
Okay.
Of course, there's other space within the facility that doesn't have beds. We do have 40 of those 140 beds are on the second floor of the facility. Our detention, short-term detention beds, both male and female, are located in another part of the facility. And then we do have an additional 20 beds kind of sitting on the other side of the facility. So there is some logistics that could probably happen for using the bed space for something else because of the layout of the facility. That
Okay.
just hasn't been looked at formally up to this point.
Just curious. I mean, we have programs that could use it. It would be nice to use that space and save some money.
I do know that CMH came out
That's what
about
I
a
was
year and a half
thinking.
ago. Yeah.
I know
Yeah,
we
it was-
closed that one facility
Yeah.
recently,
Yeah.
so.
It was I
Well,
think-
no, not by the
yeah.
kids, but, I mean,
Yeah.
if you could make it work, I don't know.
And it's,
just an
you know,
idea.
and the facility was designed and built to be very secure and correctional in its appearance.
Right.
And that may have been a problem for CMH as well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Rhonda, is your population all delinquency, or do you still have a division that's abuse and neglect?
No, it's all delinquency.
It's all delinquency.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers, any other commissioners that have questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to receive and file? Moved by Carabelli, supported by Lucido. Please vote on your iPad. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
6D, the DHS Child Care Fund.
As I indicated, so that's just one component of the child care fund, so, really what's happening in there is you have the neglect and abuse, and it's the foster care environment. I guess I'd ask Kim to maybe elaborate a little bit more, but there's, no specific DHS child care fund, it's all one operation within the child care fund. So that's where I have foster parents, neglect and abuse kids that are in institutional facilities, managed by the state of Michigan. There's also a component, which is really under the court, but it's state ward, so when the court places a child with the state of Michigan, then we pay for that cost as well. So that, private institution is about $3 million cost of the neglect and abuse or foster care component of the child care fund.
So this is the amount we pay to foster care parents?
Foster care parents and institutions, residential facilities, if you will, when kids are not placed with foster parents and have to go to a facility. Kim can say like Wolverine and Children's Village, there's a few others.
So the kids can be placed outside of the county, but if their home of origination is in the county, then we pay. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Kim, were you gonna give us an overview of anything?
I wasn't planning on it, but I can if you would like me to.
Does anybody have any questions? Do any commissioners have any questions on it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at all on the budget for that childcare? Is there a motion to receive and file? Moved by Brown, supported by Leonetti. Please vote on your iPad. Thank you, Kim, for coming.
Thank you.
Item 6E, Circuit Court Probation.
I don't know if there's anyone from the state here, but the Circuit Court probation budget is on C-51 of the budget document, so this is an operation that is staffed with state of Michigan employees over at the Clemens Center. And we receive, as a county, we receive the oversight fees that are assessed by the circuit court. The state employees then manage the probationers, if you will, and then we pay the operating costs. It's an arrangement that's been in place for a number of years, ever since I've been here, and it goes back before that. So at the end of the day, in that particular cost center, there's a net cost of about $117,000. The oversight fee revenue is in the circuit court. So the revenues in the circuit court, the operating costs for that particular office are in this cost center here. So.
Commissioner Carabelli?
Can you repeat that one more time for me? I apologize.
So
As far as the cost for the
So the cost, which is really the operating cost of the office supplies, utilities, whatever else, is about $117,000.
Okay.
The oversight fee revenue that are paid by the folks on probation is actually recorded and accounted for in the circuit court department of the general fund.
So the district court's probation goes to the district court, correct? We talked about that earlier. So any
Right.
funds generated are going back to those courts, and it'll show up in, okay. The circuit courts that's generated, that's going back to the circuit court. Where's that dollar figure at that's generated, it's going back?
That's going, well, it's either under reimbursements or charges for services, I don't know.
But that's a lump sum. And
It's
it's
a
not
lump
telling-
sum, yeah.
So if you can please
It's
give
a
it
lump
Crystal,
sum.
we'd like to see what is generated from probation going back into the general fund,
Right.
just for probation.
Right, you're really, I think what you're really interested in, if not to put words in your mouth, is are they covering their costs? More or less. If I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Commissioner, but, yeah, comparing revenues with expenditures.
Do you understand what I'm asking, Crystal? Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any other speakers on my list. Am I missing anybody? Is there a motion to receive and file? Moved by Dujay, supported by Carabelli. Please vote on your iPads. Thank you. The item passes. That concludes the budget portion of the agenda. Item number 7 is a presentation. I asked this to be added to the agenda in the event that commissioners haven't seen this. Social media has a lot of law enforcement departments doing lip sync challenges, and if anybody hasn't seen our lip sync challenge that was put out by the Sheriff's Department, Michael can play that. If everybody has already seen it, we can pass that portion of the agenda. Any comments on that? Has everybody seen it? All right, then we've got the link available if anybody wants to watch it at a later date. Thanks. Item number 8, new business. Is there any new business for the committee? Well, it was brought to my attention that a lot of people have already, everybody may have already seen it. So I wasn't gonna.
Just real quick, if you call them. I just want to point out to save the date on October 17th. It's the Martha Teaberry Foundation dinner. It's a benefit for Martha Teaberry. We appoint that board. It's nice. It's a nice event. It goes quick, and it's it's something I think that everybody should try to attend at least one time when they're a commissioner here. So I just Martha Teaberry, October 17th, and it starts like 6 o'clock.
That used to be held at the facility. Is that not there any?
It is at Zuccaro's in Chesterfield Township.
Thank you. Okay. Any other new business?
Last thing, our lawsuits.
Go ahead. You can say that. I don't know what you
Okay,
said.
last thing, our lawsuit is complete with the former clerk, Karen Spranger. We are completely out of all litigation now with our former clerk, or is. All right.
Item number 9, public participation. Seeing no members of the public, will close public participation. Duje makes a motion to adjourn, supported by Drollet. All those in favor, please vote on your iPads. We are adjourned. Thanks, Michael. We put that in my drawer.